I titled today's mind map, It's an Energetic Thing. Today we return to discussing relationships, and this information can be applied to a wide array of relationships contexts, such as friendships, business, family, personal, romantic. The premise really is you can be aware through your emotions of what is going on inside of you when you are relating with others. And as you allow yourself to feel your emotions, you allow yourself to understand the valuable information that your emotions are revealing. You see, when it comes to relationships, we want to accept that the source of it all is within. And by this I mean in the following three distinctions. Number one is that the desires of a heart when it comes to relationships already exist, as we're taught in the scriptures of the world. Imagination being the window to seeing it all in our mind's eye. Number two, like we talked about in our conversation, Sunday's video, Neville Goddard conversation, what we feel as real. The feeling referred to in that context is distinct from emotion. It is feeling as reality, as in that's the way it is, the way you imagine. That feeling transcends emotion. However, with our emotion, we know if we're operating in relationship with others from that state of, as Neville refers to, fulfilled desire. This is another reason why a healthy relationship with emotions is helpful to having the relationships you desire. I'll link in the description to the video on this feeling I'm referring to, as Neville describes it, when it comes to manifesting. Now, number three, emotions reveal how we relate with each other, and in regards to feeling it real, they are revealing what we are feeling as real. In other words, valuable information. People reveal what we are feeling as real by how we emotionally relate. This is called emotional intelligence. And that's what I'd like to explore today in the context of relationships. And while there's a lot of information regarding emotions that is helpful, I personally don't find that it captures the nuances from my personal experience when it comes to relating with others, which is why I prefer to not become overly rigid when it comes to labeling emotions. For example, I had a client tell me that they had others in their lives who tried to tell them what their emotions mean, only to feel gaslighted, which led them to feeling confused about their sense of reality. And upon deeper reflection, the label used was not true. And this was a high-profile artist who felt misunderstood by those they sought counsel with because they couldn't see how nuanced emotions are. And I understand where both are coming from, because the situation was highly nuanced. As reality doesn't work just one way or another, there are infinite ways, and the answer is it depends on a case-by-case basis. So this is about building an inward relationship with your emotions to understand the messages that they're sharing with you personally. So Daniel Goleman has a wonderful book called Emotional Intelligence. I'd recommend it if you like to explore his findings, as you can find it to be very helpful. Now, emotions are also impulses that urge us to take immediate action related to a basic human need or survival, to propel us into action without overthinking. For example, a fight or flight response. Now, this could create conflict scenarios in relationships, for example, in the following ways. One person fights, the other person flights, vice versa, or one fights and the other fights, or one flights and the other flights. And what we want in relationships is healthy dialogue and communication, be it verbal or nonverbal, or a combo of the two, which is facilitated by a healthy belief system. And when it comes to relationships, so much of the fight or flight responses that I've seen were caused by certain experiences a person had in their life, in which, as a survival mechanism, they formed certain beliefs. And these beliefs may have been helpful at that time, and maybe even have served them to a large degree when they were single. However, when they got into relationships, and this includes myself, these beliefs would reveal themselves as the theater that plays out in the relationships. And the theater didn't have to play out. The emotions were revealing what theater was about to play out. When a person has awareness or a relationship with their emotions, they can understand themselves and regulate accordingly. This is why we see someone can easily manifest a date, but are not able to have a healthy relationship with them. So there's nothing wrong with experiencing emotions in general, including emotions in relationships. What we want to be aware of is the belief causing it to be expressed a certain way when interacting with another person. And we also want to dedicate time to processing emotions, otherwise they could become suppressed and repressed. And some may genuinely process emotions faster or slower. It's not about the time. It's about what works for you. So when it comes to relating with others, it's the programming that plays out that we want to release identification to if it is not in harmony with how we truly desire the relationship to be. This allows the emotions to flow naturally and reveal what is truly going on in the interaction, so you can make an educated decision, which again is case by case. The answer is it depends. Listen to your heart and intuition, which is beyond the beliefs we could subconsciously process emotion through. So the I, which is formless, believes itself to be the beliefs it has identified with about the relationships. And thus it's important to return to a higher awareness perspective, which simply means observing and understanding the emotions before, during, and after interactions with another person, if applicable, to understand what you are believing. So it could be tempting to point the finger outwardly. That is by definition temptation, going outward, when in actuality it is the subconscious belief identified with inside mind that is causing the relationship to appear accordingly. And thus, if you change it in some shape or form, inside, the relationship changes outside in some shape or form. So choose lovingly. So let's go through this in relation to the book and discuss some of my personal experience nuances. Now, self-awareness is the key. Self-awareness in this context is what we are believing ourselves to be, what we're believing the other person to be, and or the relationship to be that the emotions are revealing. Now, when applying this in a high-risk situation, it's important to seek safety. This is why emotions are helpful. By not understanding their emotions, a person could put themselves in a position where they're at risk. Now, if no real risk is there, then you can practice being aware of what your emotions are revealing as you interact with the other person. Because maybe you genuinely like where this is going with them, rather than playing out a past belief of fear, because it's actually a safe situation and you genuinely like them. But maybe there's some fear that the person won't like you the way that you are. After the interaction, write it down and turn it into an autosuggestion like, people enjoy being with me the way I am, and I accept myself the way I am. So what I just shared can be broken down even further and related to the quadrant he shared, which covers self and social aspects, awareness and management or regulation aspects as well. So first we have self-awareness and self-management, or it has been referred to as regulation, or I like to say awareness of. In this context, it's when I'm with myself, having a healthy emotional relationship with myself. For example, I am aware of how I relate with emotions as not problematic, but rather as to be experienced and revealing of what I am experiencing in a healthy way. So nothing wrong with experiencing fight or flight emotions, as they can be helpful in situations that could be dangerous. However, We want to not fight or flight in the relationships we truly desire. Then we have social awareness and social management, which I also like to group in my videos as awareness of, which with social awareness, it is awareness of how we emotionally relate with another person. This tells us everything we need to know about our beliefs and even a meta belief of how we relate with our emotions. And as always, I encourage lovingly. So self-awareness is the core of emotional intelligence. The key here is developing the ability to understand your emotions, as well as how you relate to them, as how you relate to them also shows up in how you relate to them in your relationships. Part of this includes true self-confidence, where you know what you want in relationships, and you can also discover it on the journey and commit to realizing it. This is done by having an honest conversation with yourself after dates, for example, about what your emotions are communicating to you, which reveals the beliefs you hold as true. Now, in the self-management part of the quadrant, this is where you learn how to process your emotions in a healthy way, which can include time by yourself to observe them without shame or condemnation, and allowing yourself to feel them. Adaptability and fluidity of mind is also important as change is constant. How we emotionally relate to change is a big part of a healthy emotional relationship with yourself, which, by the way, happens automatically while you're in flow, which is why I always recommend dedicating time each day to be in flow state. I personally like to do everything from a state of flow in varying degrees. This is also where emotions are allowed to flow naturally without suppressing or repressing them. Now let's discuss social awareness, which includes empathy, and I'd also like to include compassion. So this is when you are able to understand the emotions of others, taking an honest, active interest in them, while also not becoming shaming and condemning of them, rather understanding. You can be aware without becoming overly identified with beliefs, as we've been discussing. This is also a mark of a great leader. Like the saying goes, the lips of wisdom are closed except to the ears of understanding, the Kybalion. It's amazing how much people will share if we listen with a sympathetic ear to understand. And again, it doesn't mean you have to perpetuate any beliefs, as you have the power to observe what you are believing. Then we have the relatability part, which he refers to as relationship management, which includes the art of inspiring. And the way we inspire is by living our philosophy and embodying it. You can say everything flows, energy flows, emotions flow naturally and automatically by the degree of embodiment of how we truly desire to be, which then you'll see the ideal relationships happen automatically. And from this reference experience, we also find the genuine desire to relate emotionally with another person, which can happen verbally or non-verbally or a combination, to offer guidance, which is usually a result of exploratory conversations rather than unnecessary confrontation, which is distinct from a fight or flight response, which again is a result of a subconscious belief once accepted as true. There's a distinction between staying true to your heart versus fighting. There's also a distinction between consciously choosing to move on versus flighting. One is from intuition and the other is from past beliefs that may not be helpful with how you truly desire your relationships to be. This then leads to true influence, which we'll even notice we're revealing our own authentic communication style in relationships, which is why I rather focus on the state. We can remain in the ideal state when it comes to relationships by understanding through our emotions if we are in our ideal state which then we can know what to do or not do. And as it becomes a habit, you reprogram your subconscious mind, and it becomes automatic and natural, only this time ideally when it comes to relationship. And what you'll notice is you'll also authentically communicate in a style that communicates very congruently with a high fidelity and is deeply relatable with others, which again could be verbal or nonverbal, or a combination of the two in a harmonious way. This leads to being a true catalyst change and building bonds and teamwork as well. As I see, for example, romantic relationships have a chemistry component, a love component, and through what we discussed here, a healthy, intuitive, emotional, relatability, teamwork way of being. So I trust you found this video to be helpful. Let's go ahead and conclude this with an auto-suggestion to further encourage. You could say, I realize that I am in harmony with how I truly desire to be, which shows up in the different areas of my life, which includes relationships in harmony with how I truly desire them to be. From this state, I am aware of how I feel in relationship with myself and in relationship with others to understand what is being revealed. From this understanding, I'm able to feel at ease wherever I go, which increases each day, externalizing as ideal relationships that reflect as far as my senses perceive. If you would like a copy of this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk with you soon. Take care.